now return to the 6th installment of Whoniverse database. Thanks to everyone who's been watching these so far, and if you haven't yet then please feel free to watch the other episodes in this series on my channel. This time we'll be looking into the history of the Great Vampires, also known as the Yuzgoroth. The origins of the Yuzgoroth were not recorded by the Matrix, as they came into existence when the universe was in one of its earliest most stages, before Time Lord society is what it is today. So an exact point of origin is unknown for sure, but all accounts agree that they were accidentally released into the universe by the Time Lords during the Dark Times near the beginning of the universe. When this happened, one Yuzgoroth appeared on Gallifrey, also called the Homeworld, where it established the Caldera. The vampire race comprised of great or king vampires, which were huge bat-like creatures who could turn other lesser beings into vampires, including humanoids like the officers of the Hydrax and the aquatic Saturnians. These vampires would often serve the Great Vampire as servants, as seen in the story State of Decay. The vampires and Great Vampires required blood as sustenance, much like vampires of Earth legends, of which the Yuzgoroth were probably the inspiration for. Throughout the Dark Times, the Great Vampires supposedly caused chaos and destruction in the cosmos. This is one of the possible reasons for the start of the Eternal War between the Time Lords and vampires. A war that lasted for 500 years according to some accounts and ended in the defeat of the entire vampire race, save for one king vampire who fled into E-space and awaited his recovery. Rassilon created mighty weapons called bow ships that were used to pierce the hearts of the vampires and kill them, this being the only way to do so, as they had incredible regenerative abilities and couldn't be killed by conventional means. This war was finally ended for good when the 4th Doctor killed the last king vampire in E-space. It is also thought that this war is what sickened the Time Lords of violence forever. Not much more is known about the history of the Yuzgoroth due to most of it occurring in the early parts of recorded time and even before recorded time. However, one very interesting thing to consider is an event shown to Charlie Pollard by the TARDIS in a projection in the Big Finish audio Zagreus. There it's shown that Great Vampires were against Rassilon as he worked in his foundry back when Gallifrey and the universe was still in its infancy. A disguised vampire called Tepesh gained entry to Rassilon's foundry and uncovered many of his works and creations, even witnessing the divergence trapped within the facility. I won't go into any more detail on this particular event as it will be covered more in depth in a couple episodes time. However, Tepesh states that the vampires are actually a peaceful race who only want to live normally and gets furious at Rassilon for needlessly starting a war of extermination against them, along with other things that will be brought up in another video. So the true nature and intentions of the vampires is a little blurred, but without more knowledge of their history it's hard to decide exactly what they were truly like. There's some interesting trivia about the Yuzgoroth too. One rumour for example states that the Time Lords got their ability to regenerate from the Great Vampires themselves, although exactly how this happened is unknown, although it definitely had something to do with Rassilon and his experiments. Perhaps Rassilon himself was bitten by a Great Vampire and then went on to create regeneration from that somehow, elevating certain Gallifreyans above the others and making them Time Lords. The last king vampire fled into E-space at the end of the Eternal War, where it lured a human exploration ship called the Hydrax and turned 3 of its officers into immortal vampires. They went on to rule over a peasant population on the planet for over 1,000 years, where they would feed the Great Vampire with the blood of the villagers. The remains of the Hydrax became the tower of the 3 who rule, with the king vampire resting underground beneath the tower. These vampires, including the king, were all killed when the Doctor intervened at the time of arising, before the king could awaken fully. The Saturnians, seen in the 11th Doctor episode The Vampires of Venice, were also connected to the Yuzgoroth. Once a normal aquatic species, the Saturnine were caught in a crossfire between the Yuzgoroth and the Time Lords, where the entire race was turned into vampires by the Yuzgoroth, thus making them what they are in their first on-screen appearance. And that about covers it for the Great Vampires and what's known of their history. Some things that were touched on in this video will be explored further in a future video not too far from now, so if you like this video then please click the thumbs up and subscribe for more of these. I love doing these Doctor Who related videos, so I like to know the people that watch and enjoy them as well. Until the next video, goodbye my viewers.